Welcome to today's GOLearn session on securing trust. So I'm excited to have two distinguished guests joining us today. On the one hand, it's Ali Spino, Business Development Manager at Aequivalent, and Eldar Zeynalli, a cybersecurity expert and ethical hacker who goes by the nickname Hakupiku. So before we dive into today's session, just a couple of housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded and we'll send you out a video link by the end of the week. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function of Zoom, and we will address your questions either during the webinar or at the end of the session, depending on the flow of the discussions. So, today we are focusing on two crucial topics. One is ethical hacking, and the other one is how to ensure trust also in ethical hacking by background checks. And both are very fundamental building blocks of a security framework. Let's start with ethical hacking. As cyber threats continue to evolve in complexity and impact, traditional security measures often fall short. And ethical hacking has therefore emerged as a critical method by simulating malicious attacks on systems to identify vulnerabilities before they can exploit it by malicious actors. It's like having a health check by the doctor to find vulnerabilities in your immune system before an actual disease can exploit it. And as digital infrastructures become more and more integral to our everyday life, the demand for ethical hackers also has increased. And companies across various sectors are now recognizing the importance of proactive security assessments, which is penetration testing, but also extended by an ethical hacking community. And notably, even the Swiss Federal Council is actively supporting this movement. At the end of last year, they adopted a report which advocated for the institutionalization of ethical hacking to enhance cybersecurity. So joining us today is hakupiku, and he's one of our brilliant security researchers. I had the pleasure of meeting Eldar in person last year when he joined for our GoHack event in Zurich. And I was impressed by his skills. Thanks for being here today, Eldar.
Thank you for inviting me, Michael.
Well, my pleasure. So what everyone who listens now is interested in, if we speak with a real hacker, what is hacking in general? Or let me rephrase the question. What are you doing all day long?
Well, I work as a cybersecurity consultant, so most of what I do at work is essentially penetration testing, ethical hacking, web and mobile applications at work. What this means is our customer has a product, let's say a website, some application, some mobile application, something that they want to get penetration test. What that means is they want to make sure it doesn't have any vulnerabilities that can be abused by malicious actors to get access to their users' data or undermine the availability or integrity of the system. So my job is to help them find those vulnerabilities, remediate those vulnerabilities before any data breaches can happen, any malicious actors can use these vulnerabilities to attack them, essentially. That's what I do during my daytime job. But after that, I usually do some bug bounty, which is essentially the same thing or more or less, but I do it for as a hobby. So I've turned my hobby into a job, or my job into a hobby, let's say, since I really enjoy doing it. So it's like I used to be an avid mystery reader, so it's like putting pieces of the mystery together, hacking something, and when you're also doing something good, and also being paid for it. It's really enjoyable.
Great. Sounds like you found your passion. So, but you mentioned it. You try to find security holes before a malicious actor can find them. So when we hear in the media about hacking, it's almost every time a bad thing. What distinguishes ethical hacking from malicious hacking?
Well, the idea is that we're not using it for our own gain, right? We're doing it because we're contracted to do so, or we have explicit permission from the company in some way, either through some NDA or through some let's say responsible disclosure policy that says that okay, you can do this and this, or VDPs. We have explicit permission to test the system, and what we do when we test the system is we find the vulnerabilities and help you remediate them, let you know about them. The difference is that a malicious attacker would use it for their own financial gain, or they could be state actors, obviously, so for other reasons. So we are the ones defending you against malicious actors, essentially. That's the main difference.
So what's the difference between building systems and testing them for security?
I think building and testing them for security, I think security should be a part of building. Actually, we should build with security in mind, but that hasn't been the case for the past 20, 30 years. So now we've got a lot of systems that are built with just building them in mind, just building and putting it out, instead of thinking about the security while building. And that's led to a lot of applications. I'll say that there is no application that I test that doesn't have any vulnerabilities. Every system will have some vulnerabilities. It's just that what is the severity of the vulnerabilities, right? It's about that. But building and security should not be that different. They should be intertwined. And I think we're working towards that. And I've seen a lot of companies with this idea of shifting to left. I think it's called shifting left, where security is becoming more and more part of building.
Yes, I see. So you told me once that you on your own, you were a software developer once.
Yeah,
so you developed
exactly.
software, you built things. So just out of curiosity, it takes a certain kind of person who builds things, and in my experience, it's another kind of person who tries to solve the riddle, to find some piece to take out of the construction to let it fall in. So to find these vulnerabilities. So it seems that you are more the kind of the person who likes to solve the riddle and takes hours in finding such a vulnerability. So as a child, were you a person who built the Lego construction, or were you the child who destroyed the Lego constructions of others?
Well, I was definitely the one to build it, I would say. And I was always more interested in software development than I got into hacking. It was a bit of a coincidence, but yeah, I would say that I was always the one to build things. But I think it gives you an insight when you've been a developer. It gives you a special insight into what can go wrong when building software, and that makes it easier to find out what vulnerabilities can be common in the system, what can go wrong. I think I don't think it's that different. I don't think in my opinion at least. I don't think they are that different. If you're good at building, you're going to know which piece to take out first, which piece can fall out first. And I think that's the insight I've gotten being a developer, and that's what I put into hacking.
And how did you enter the field of ethical hacking? What motivates you to continue also in this field?
I entered it. I was studying computer science at KTH in Sweden. After finishing my bachelor, I started working as a software developer. At the same time, I wanted to do a master's, and I thought I was already decent at software engineering, so I wanted a bit different field for my master's. So I chose cybersecurity, but at that point, I didn't really know much about cybersecurity. But one day when I was out with a friend who was a really good hacker, we went out drinking. We went to his place and we were playing some game. And then he said, "Oh, there is a CTF competition going on. The CTF is Capture the Flag. It's a hacker competition, essentially." And I didn't know about what that was either. I was like, "Look, it's really fun." So I started competing a bit with him in this CTF competition. And I thought this is really fun. This is like solving a mystery, hacking and finding the vulnerabilities to solve the mystery. And I really loved it. And that's what really kindled my interest, actually. Even if I was already enrolled in cybersecurity degree, I wasn't really interested in ethical hacking that much before. But that got me into it, and I started doing more CTFs, and I started taking more ethical hacking courses at university, and then I got a job, and then yeah, a few years later we're here. What I really love about it is I get to work with a lot of different systems. I get to see a lot of different code. I get to test and find vulnerabilities and research and come up with new ways to hack, new ways to hack systems that there have been like a lot of eyes on this system already. So it's always surprising that there is a vulnerability there, and it gives me a huge both boost of confidence that I found harder as a developer to get, but also a huge boost of let's say hormones that makes me feel real happy when you find that vulnerability after like looking for a lot of hours, and you know there's something there but you can't solve it. When you find it, it's a really amazing feeling, and that's what keeps me going.
So can you say what are the most common security issues? Are there any security issues which you identify as most common, or are they always different in the systems you test?
Yeah, I would say they're more or less different on different systems. It's just that with the software landscapes changing with new frameworks, new browser security mechanisms, some vulnerabilities are becoming less common than others. For example, one vulnerability like CSRF, cross-site request forgery, that was super common maybe 10 years ago, is a lot harder to exploit these days. It's a lot less common because there are browser level restrictions that make it hard on all browsers or modern browsers. They are still possible, and I still find a lot of CSRF vulnerabilities, but it's less common. I would say the same can be said about even SQL injections. They were a lot more common in systems built 10, 20 years ago. But if there is one vulnerability that I don't think has changed that much in popularity when I test either super old systems or super new, is authorization issues. When there is some way to get access to some other users' data, some other organizations' data, update some other organization data, deleted. Even in most robust systems, I've found some kind of authorization issue. It's because you have to essentially fix it case by case, right? You can't have a browser mechanism, or you can't have a server mechanism that completely defeats it.
That is interesting. So as you said, most applications are not built by on the green field. They are built on frameworks to speed up the development, to share components, and so on. But what's pretty interesting is that even if you use such frameworks and they developed further with respect to security, and also the browsers, as you mentioned, they also try to prevent certain attacks and so on. But still, the applications that are running in a bug bounty program usually are already security tested by professional penetration testers. So how is it that you still are able to find vulnerabilities in such already tested systems?
I would say it's definitely several different factors. One is time restrictions for a penetration test. Penetration tests are usually going to be 1 week, 2 weeks, let's say 40, 80, up to 106 hours for a system. And if you're testing a super huge system, you're going to do the bare minimum, or like you're going to do whatever you can within that time limit, right? We're going to try to test the most critical things first. We're going to test different functionalities with different attacks in mind, but you're not going to have as much time as a bug bounty hunter that can spend 20, 30 hours on one functionality, one specific functionality. You just don't have that time as a penetration tester, and I know that. And from working as a penetration tester, I have 48 hours to work, find all the vulnerabilities. I'm trying to give the customer most value of their time as I can. I'm not gonna spend 20, 30 hours to exploit a certain vulnerability that might exist. Try to, I mean, spend all the time and I have 10, 20 hours left for the rest of the application. That's not scalable. That's not correct. So one of the reasons is that, well, bug bounty hunters don't have a deadline, don't have a time limit. They can spend 20, 30 hours on one specific functionality and find a specific type of bug. Another reason is that software is not static. Software is dynamic. More and more code is being rolled out. Code is being changed, with updated all the time, and that introduces or reintroduces the old vulnerabilities. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason I would say is the fact that there is more and more new research in the field, in cybersecurity field. You know that things that seemed unexploitable are being exploited today, and this being able to exploit them and show that, oh, this is vulnerable requires a specific, let's say, skill set. If the research wasn't out when the penetration test was done, obviously the penetration tester likely wouldn't have found it. So as a community security of cybersecurity professionals, let's say, our knowledge is increasing as well with every passing day. So we're becoming better, but we're hoping that our knowledge is increasing faster than the malicious actors, so that we are faster at finding these vulnerabilities and helping companies remediate them before malicious actors can use them. Yeah, those are the reasons. Obviously, there is also more. This is probably less of a factor, but obviously it also depends on who is testing your system, their skill set as well. Some hackers, are better at certain things than others.
Absolutely. So you mentioned before that it's like a riddle and that you have to be motivated to solve this riddle. Have you experienced once or more times that you tried to find something and you realized there is something, but you couldn't solve it, and then you put it away, and then in midst the night you wake up and have an idea and try it again. And so is that the case?
Extremely common. Extremely common that I'll find something that is, I know that this is gonna be, this should be vulnerable, this should be exploitable, there is something I can do here, but I just can't solve it. So I'll write it down in a notebook. And then sometimes after months, when I'm testing something else, I'll see something and I said, oh shit, that could work there. I'll go back and test it. And honestly, I'll say at least once a month, I find a big vulnerability like that, just something that I put in my notebook months ago, and I come back to it because a month later I could be better hacker and solve it. I'm saving it for the let's say 2 months from now, Haku. He's gonna be better than I am now, so maybe he might be able to solve the puzzle.
That's cool. So it's like partly in some hacker movies where you can see that passion as well. So pretty cool. Thanks a lot, Eldar, for these interesting insights. We now switch the topic over to trust and verification of ethical hackers. So working with ethical hackers is not just about the skills, as you mentioned, but it's also about to trust them. So how can you be sure that the ethical hackers really uphold the ethical behavior and that they behave as they are supposed to? But honestly, that is a problem that you have with your own staff as well. So you have to have some sort of trust into your own administrative people, as well as into the ethical hackers and other external service providers that you work with. So, and to ensure such trust, different levels of identity verification are required. So for instance, on the GObugfree platform, where anyone can hunt for vulnerabilities in public programs with just providing the name and the email address. But as soon as you want to do research in private programs or submit vulnerabilities, in any case, you are required to verify your identity and provide proof for that. But that's not enough for certain situations, especially in the field of regulated areas like financial industries. And so our customers want to have more insights about who is going to try to hack their systems. And for that, we work together with Aequivalent to do some background checks. And now with us here is Alice Biener from Aequivalent. And we delve deeper into this topic now with you. Hi, Alice.
Hello, thank you for having me here. Very happy to explain you some more about trusting ethical hackers.
You're very welcome. So Alice, could you right away start by explaining what background checks are in general and what the key components are, and especially why your customers use such services?
Of course. Here are also some slides to support my speaking. To start with, I would show you a saying of Warren Buffett. If you hire a person in your company, it's very important to consider 3 points. It would be energy, intelligence, and integrity. Imagine you have an employee full of energy, very intelligent, but not integer. Therefore, this could be very hard on your company. And therefore, there are some background checks. You can also call them fit and proper checks, integrity checks, compliance checks, and the equivalent, we call them equivalent checks. And why we would need background checks, it's on the next slide. There are 2 main reasons. And on the first side, there is the risk and security reason. Therefore, you either work in a regulated sector, for example, like banking, aviation, security, or nowadays also in insurances, you have to do background checks. but also if you want to have a certain standard or a label, for example, the ISO certification 27001, it's the Information and Security Management certification. There you have to background check all your employees. And then what's also good to have background checks, you can reduce your human risk, you can actively manage it, and with the so-called integrity checks, this helps you to predict the work and learning performance of your employees. This also helps, of course, to strengthen your employer brand. And then we come to the other side, the human resources. It can be also very practical for human resources sites to know your employee. You know your candidate's background, and therefore you also see what risk could be laying in this recruitment. And of course, this also, if you work, for example, with an external supplier like Aequivalent, this helps you also to have compliant personal dossiers, all digitalized, and it can also reduce the time to hire, as you have the administrative burden taken over by someone else, and you know the qualitative check of the CV is well done. Exactly.
Great. And how does that work in general? How does the process work?
Exactly. Here you can see some of the verification that Aequivalent does for its clients. We can do identity checks, diploma verification. We can also go in employment histories, criminal records, international watch list, financial probity. You see, it's very broad. We can see very deep into the whole process of the background of a candidate. And how it works? First of all, we always recommend to make risk assessments, like see all the functions in your company and see what risk is laying in the function. It's not relying on the person, it's really on the profile. For example, does this person have any responsibilities financial, or can they see data of clients, or is there like a high responsibility in the IT infrastructure or other infrastructure? There you can see different risks, and therefore you should make the risk groups and then decide what background check is needed for this profile. And then on the other side, when should you do a background check? Does it really need to be before the person enters in a company, or can it be also a bit later in the process, or after a few years, should you do maybe a repetition? And if you think about the whole supply chain and the risk management, is it only the internal employees that carry a risk, or maybe you have an external IT company or so who also has quite a lot of details and can have some risk in there? It's also interesting to consider everything and then define like a transparent and objective human risk mitigation and screening policy, that everyone has also the same chance through the whole process of recruiting.
Very interesting. So, and it's not only about internal employees, but also about external service providers. So with our ethical hacking community, we are very interested in having a clear view on potential risks. And also our customers demand that from time to time, as I said, especially in the financial field. So how did you adapt the process for our ethical hacking community to, as in the example of GObugfree?
Yeah, I'm happy to show you this. In the next slide here, you can see the 7 steps. This is our standard process. And here I'm going to showcase it with Eldars as our screening candidate. Like, first of all, GObugfree has to inform Eldar about the whole background check process. He needs to be aware and ready to go through the process with us. And then GObugfree has a platform login on our platform. They can go directly there and choose the right program to screen Eldar. We made together a light hacker program. I'm going to show it later to you. And then as soon as it's ordered on our platform, Aequivalent is doing its work. First of all, we're going to contact Eldar and assist him during this whole process. And then he will receive a login to the platform. He can go into that And first of all, he has to sign his confirmation that we can do officially the background check in a legal framework. Then he also adds all his information and he declares them. As soon as he has done this, we're going to do our work and we go directly to the sources and verify all his background and see if he really said the truth. And during this process and afterwards, GObugfree can go to the platform and see in live how far are we with the verification process. And by the end, you will receive a final report. You can download it, and GObugfree had exactly 90 days time to download everything from our platform. And then on the next slide, I can show you how we developed the product. Like, first of all, we need to know the person, the ID or a passport, to really be sure that this is the right person that we do the background check on. Then we always do an address history verification. This is important to have the right criminal record and to get the financial property from all the countries from the last 5 years to be sure that everything in the last 5 years was clear and not something happened that we are not aware of. Then we always get a criminal record, financial property, and we can also watch global watch lists where we really see was there any involvement in political affairs or public media presence, where we could find out if this ethical hacker has done something bad already beforehand.
Great. Thanks for pointing out how that all works. So for GObugfree and for our customers, we are very happy with that. But Eldar, as someone who has gone through the process, what was your experience with that? And do you think that it makes sense to do such extended background checks on ethical hackers?
I think it definitely makes sense that you want to know who's testing your system. Even in like pen tests at work, where we're all really from. I work for a Swedish company. Our customers are Swedish companies, and even then, if it's a company that's dealing with some governmental or municipal agency, they'll require background checks. And that's when we already have the company watching for us, but we're also all Swedish citizens generally. But so it makes sense that companies in a bug bounty platform, they would want to know who's hacking them, because it's more international, right? It's not just people from one country, it's people from anywhere in the world. They could be anyone. So I think it definitely makes sense, and yeah, I would, if I was, let's say it like this, if I was running my own company, I wanted to have a bug bounty, I would definitely want to know who's hacking me and what risks can be associated with those people. I was happy with the process with Equivalent. It felt smooth. I got a link. I just logged in, submitted the files that I needed, and I was in close contact with them in an email exchange, let's say, because I didn't have some of the files that were needed at first, so I needed. It took a bit of time, but they were very patient. Yeah.
It's great to hear that. So, do you follow-up question? Do you think that ethical hackers will accept that they will be background checked, or what would be a reason why someone in the community would think that he or she don't want to undergo such an extended background check?
I mean, a good question. I would say there are a lot of people who want to be like completely anonymous. But personally, I think if you're dealing with especially bug bounty, there is no way at all of being completely anonymous. You'll usually have to provide your information for tax reasons at the very least. you'll have to have that. So if you have that, I mean, I don't think if you were given like gone through a validation, identity validation, I don't think most hackers would be that worried about going through a full background check. Personally, I think. But if there is anyone, it's probably because they want to be completely anonymous. I mean, if there are people who are really obsessed with being anonymous and privacy, obviously it's going to be the community of ethical hackers. So I think for background checks, if you see any kind of pushback, it's going to be in this kind of field.
I see. I see.
I mean, some people want their want to be completely anonymous, and they even want their payments in crypto just to stay anonymous. But for me, it's not like that because I do this more of a professional thing, right? I'm completely fine with it.
Thanks, Eldar. So, Alice, a last question to your side. So, it all sounds very good with the background checks and so on, but there are certainly also limitations. For example, I guess it could be that some countries don't provide the necessary information that is needed for a proper background check. How do you address that?
Exactly, like in every country, there is different regulations, legislations, and we always have to apply with that. Therefore, we need to know in what country is the person coming from and where does the person is working in. And then in some countries, it's a bit more hard for us to get the information because, for example, in Germany or also in Sweden, there is some parts that the candidate has to go by himself and get the information. But we at Equivalent, we try to really make the life easier, give them the right links, give them the right information, that it's an easy and quick done and doesn't take too much of their time.
Thanks for that. Okay, so we are reaching the end of the session. There are some questions, I guess. Nadine, did you summarize the questions? Is there a question that we want to let answer?
Yeah, I think we have quickly time for two. I'll just be an off-camera voice here. Just to follow up on that question about the country-specific information, Alice, how can you also be sure that you don't miss any substantial details or information? How do you try to mitigate that?
Like, first of all, the communication is key. It's really about communicating to the candidate that he knows I need to declare everything I have. And what we really can verify is the information that is submitted by the candidate. This is what we can verify. If the candidate is hiding some information, we're going to find it, we're going to highlight it as well. But it's really about what do we have, what can we check, and then it's what we find. Is this answer clear? Yeah.
So it's like penetration testing where you do as good as it is possible, but still it might be that you miss something as everywhere in life where you need risk management in place.
Exactly. And especially because we are like a company, people are working there. We take the background checks. We always double verify. It's always two people checking the same person. But we don't have artificial intelligence programs. It's really people working there, and it's about speaking a lot, transparency, and making everything clear as possible. It's always a little gap of human mistakes, of course.
Yes, and it's an additional layer of security. So cybersecurity in the core is risk management. And if you want to invite ethical hackers that could pose some risk, and to mitigate that risk, you use identity verification processes and additionally background checks and so on to mitigate these kind of risks. And absolutely, it's possible to have different levels of trust that you can provide. Even in our hacking community, we have split that up into different trust circles. So our employees are in the most inner trust circle, and then there is a trust circle of trusted ethical hackers where we had good experiences and did background checks. And then it goes on with the trust circle, so to speak. And the closer you are at the center, so to speak, the less are the risks. And something like that has to be in place in every company, I think. Yeah. Okay, so thanks a lot. I guess we will now finish up because the time is up. So my key messages of today that I took out is ethical hacking is essential. It is essential to think about how to approach ethical hacking in the own security framework. But also there has to be put trust into it, not just hiring ethical hackers and not knowing anything about them. The trust is paramount, and the integrity and trustworthiness of those we entrust with our cybersecurity are crucial. And therefore background checks are a good instrument for establishing this trust. So these are my two key take-home messages. Now, watch your email. We will send, as I said, the recording of today's session out by the end of this week. And we invite you, as always, to provide us with feedback on today's session. Your comments will help us to improve our webinars in the future. And finally, if there are any questions not addressed today, feel free to contact us directly, and then we will try to establish the connection also to the speakers, to today's speakers. And now to end this GOLearn session, thank you once again, Alice and Eldar, and to all of you for joining us today. And stay safe and keep striving for security and trust in all your digital interactions. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.